I mean, Mozart, again, to him, he was, that was further back, but he was a big improviser. That was a big part of what his musicality was all about. Like, improvise something for us, Wolfgang, so, and all those guys, Chopin and Liszt, they were all able to just play.
Welcome to the Mr. Bill Podcast. I'm Bill's manager, Anand Harsh. I'm also editor-in-chief of theUnst.com. For those of you who are new to the show this week, I handle Bill's intros for him because he hates doing them, and I'm a sucker. Simple as that. Bill's guest today is a huge get for us, and we're absolutely over the moon. Jordan Rudess has been the keyboard player for prog legends Dream Theater for more than 2 decades now. He's been voted the greatest keyboard player of all time by Music Radar readers, and this Juilliard-trained pianist has also done a slew of hired gun work, including on Bowie's 2002 album Heathen, which is a sleeper in the catalog and one of my personal favorites. On top of that, he's founded the software company Wizdom Music, which has created all sorts of amazing music technology platforms for iPhone and iPad. His latest tool, GeoShred, is super gnarly. I'm so excited for you all to hear this interview. But first, Patreon folks, let me take a second to thank all of you. You've kept us all going while Bill is sidelined from touring due to COVID. Patrons get early access to episodes, bonus content, secret merch bundles, Discord roles, and more. Visit patreon.com/MrBillsTunes to subscribe. Finally, please head over to MrBillsTunes.com to sign up to become a hardcore Ableton-ear. You get full access to Bill's project files and tutorials, access to sample packs, and there's a lot there for producers of all levels. All right, here's Bill's chat with Jordan Rudess of Dream Theater.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Hey, you are listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Hey, you're 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 listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast. Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Hey, you're listening to the Mr. Bill Podcast.
Sweet. Cool. Yeah, speaking of recording like on each end and then meshing the recordings together at the end to create like a coherent end product thing, that sounds like it was recorded in a studio. Have you messed around much with collaborating with other artists that way? Because I guess like, when I collaborate with other people, because I'm an electronic musician, we just send the project file back and forth, right? But being more of like a player and in a band and stuff like that, you would more or less be sending your parts in, right? Like audio parts that you play, and then, assuming that you're not going to a studio to record, sometimes like, say everyone's busy and touring and on their own schedules and stuff. Have you messed around much with everybody like sending their audio parts into an engineer and then having the engineer kind of like figure it all out on their end?
Well, I did 2 albums with Tony Levin and Marco Minneman. And we did it all at home. Everybody did their parts at home. So it was all kind of like one person who would write the song and then send the files around, and we would just do our parts and then send them in, and that would be, that would be it, except if anybody had a comment, well, we would go back and change it. But yeah, I mean, I guess, to a point that's I've worked a bunch that way.
And how does the engineer line all of the parts up? I guess do you just all play to a click track and then just say, all right, my part comes in after 4 clicks or whatever? And
we always start, we send them files and record from 0, and then it will line up. I do plenty of like solos and things like that on people's albums, where they send me something and I'll do a solo, and then I've got it, here at home, and then I've just got to send it back to them, and I just bounce it from 0, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was talking to I had a guy on the podcast a couple of days ago who is a keys player who's been to college for that stuff and whatnot. And we were talking about jazz players versus classical players and soloing. And he was saying classical players are insane. Like they'll spend 12 hours a day in a room sort of like learning sheet music, and they're sort of like mechanical in the sense that they can just like read and play anything sort of, but they're not so good at like improvisation and soloing. Would you say you're more on that side of things then, the improvisation and soloing side of things, or more on the sort of like mechanical reading side of things?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that I am really about both things. When I started my studies, I had a teacher that was a jazz player, but he was teaching me at the very, very beginning. But he noticed that I had a good ear. So he was, instead of showing me the little red book that everybody learns from, he was teaching me the chords. And by teaching me the chords, I could then, look at like a piece of guitar music, which might show you just the melody and a chord symbol. So what ended up happening was that I went from that teacher to a more serious teacher who prepared me for the Juilliard School, which is, of course, the most serious classical school there is. So my teacher there didn't want to know anything about my improvisational skills. But that was, to me, always the really fun musical. It was a really fun musical part of who I am and what I do. So even through my most serious studies at Juilliard, I'd have to hide that a little bit, but I kept it going. So there was always a real balance for me between like really studying to play, whatever classical piece of music was in front of me, and also keeping my my personal musicality going, improvising, playing other kinds of music. And I'd have secret meetings of the Juilliard kids down the hall in a practice room, and I'd play them some like boogie woogie and like blues stuff, and we would all chuckle and think it was funny because we were, hiding out from the teacher, the classical teacher with the whip, Oh
yeah, that was like probably back in the day where hitting children was fine, right?
Right. That was the best way to get good really quickly, because you didn't want to get attacked with a, like a foot to your ankle or something, or.
Yeah, now you can't even attack people with words, or you get fired.
Exactly.
As a teacher.
You have to be too careful.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which is kind of good. I mean, society right now feels, apart from COVID and everything being on fire and all of that kind of stuff, feels generally societally somewhat safe in terms of violence,
that kind of thing.
Not getting offended.
Right. Aside from all the wacky stuff that's going on in the world right now.
Yeah, if you minus literally everything, it's not bad.
Yeah, if you take all the crazy, like, horrible things away, it's actually looking pretty good, man. Yeah, I agree. That's funny.
Yeah.
Good way to look at it.
So what do you see like the more, do you see like more value in one kind of playing over another? Like, do you see more value, for instance, in somebody being able to just have sheet music thrown in front of them and just be able to sort of play it like a machine, or do you see more value in a player who's able to kind of improvise and just sort of feel it out as they're going, and you can play them anything and they can just like adapt to it? Like, what do you think is like a more valuable skill to have out of those two skills?
Yeah, I mean, with what I do, my whole world is based upon my very, very solid foundation that I learned, my technique, my, ability to compose using different skills that I learned. So everything is based upon this kind of rooted foundation in piano and composition, and I think all the other things that I do, all the improvisation, all the ear work that I do is just comes kind of on top of that and makes for who I am. It's hard to really say, okay, there's one without the other. But of course, not many people are lucky enough to get that kind of really serious classical training. A lot of it is just also about, since I'm a keyboard player and keyboards are a very physical skill, it's about being able to play what's in my head. So if I hear something in my mind, I can put my hand down on the notes and I can actually articulate that. And being an improviser, I can hear it in my head. And if the force is with me, I can play it as the flow is happening. So, I mean, that's probably, of all the things that I do, that's the thing that I love the most, is when I just really kind of flowing along and there's no interruption in that connection between my brain and what I'm feeling, hearing in my head musically and what's coming out, and having it be like a conversation that's very smooth, where it just kind of goes from point A to point B and it's just liquidy and just goes.
Right. Yeah, I feel the same way about production a little bit. It's like the better you get at your software, eventually it just becomes kind of like another limb, and like getting information out into it, like the stuff that you're hearing in your head and the ideas that you have, there's like not a lot of friction between your thought
right.
and that happening.
Yeah, I guess like how well do you know your tools, right? You hear something and you know where you're going to go to get that sound. It's probably
that's the ideal thing. I mean, that's
technique.
what I think what every musician or producer should strive for, right? Is or anyone doing anything really. It's like you really want to strive to have like as little friction as possible between thoughts and like tangibility, basically.
Right. It's an interesting thing to think about, like, well, in your world of production with electronic music, where you're not necessarily, playing the notes in real time, where you might be entering them one by one, or you might be working with loops or patterns, in that it's not like talking, but it is still something where you just need to be able to move through time and get to your goal at a good rate and and not interrupt the musicality of the, whatever inspiration is happening.
Well, it's not like talking in real time like we are now. I would compare it more to like writing, right? Or like, when you're sending an email to someone, you're sort of writing and it's like your thought is coming out into the email in real time as you're typing, but then you might go back and like rethink and edit.
It's composing. It's composing basically, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Speaking of which, I had a question about composers. Like you have these classical people, right, who sort of sit down for 12 hours a day or whatever in front of a piano and just like read stuff that composers have written and just play it exactly as the composer had intended or interpreted in their own, similar way to everybody else as the composer, wrote it in such a way that it can only be interpreted a couple of ways or whatever. But aren't the composers who wrote these pieces kind of improvisers in that way? Because they either played it out in real time and were like, oh, that's sick, and then wrote it down, or they sort of just like, as we were just saying, in the sense of writing an email and then editing or whatever, they would, sit at their candlelit table with a quill and a piece of manuscript paper or staff paper or whatever, and just sort of write stuff down like as they were thinking it, right? So in some form or another, it's like the composer had to, have a bunch of improvised thoughts that he was writing down or playing and then writing down later or whatever. Right. Correct? Or like?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. You think of this like the stories of Mozart or something like that, and he hears it in his head, then it's just like you kind of rush to get it down by having your pencil in hand and writing it all down.
So why in the classical world do people put this music that essentially was an improvised piece of music that's been written down and played for centuries on a pedestal, but they don't put improvisation on a pedestal? Yeah,
that's a big question. Years ago, maybe like 150 years ago, improvisation was part of what was going on in the classical world. Nowadays, people don't improvise at a classical concert. But, I mean, Mozart, again, to him, he was, that was further back, but he was a big improviser. That was a big part of what his musicality was all about. Like, improvise something for us, Wolfgang, so, and all those guys, Chopin and Liszt, they were all able to just play. So somehow along the line, it got very narrowed and stiff, and it's really a shame, because I think that's, it just, you find you hear these people who do go to the classical music school, but they just sit there, like you said, and they'll work all day. They'll be able to play like almost like a machine and get these notes out in a certain time and at a certain velocity, and they're training themselves to get that done. That to me is further away. It takes you away from the music. I mean, the music is written by these guys who had the ears and the sensibility to let the music just kind of like, come out and be inspired and flow and maybe and kind of improvised, even if it was actually written down. So, yeah, that's an interesting. It always interests me, and it always like saddens me that we kind of got into this place where classical music has become, more. I don't know, stale or boring, because you just get this feeling like they're not free. They're not just freely expressing.
Right. But as I guess like the opposite side to that is maybe unlike jazz musicians so much, or, metal musicians, or, whoever else, classical musicians definitely probably have the upper hand on sight reading, right, where they can just sort of put something in front of them and just play it, because that's what they're sort of trained to do, is just recite what is already happened
What
on
has
sheet
happened,
music,
yeah. Right,
which
right.
is awesome. And that's a crazy tool to
good.
have when you have 60 of those people in the same room together, right? So I had a
Right.
friend at RMIT University in Australia, in Melbourne, actually.
Yeah.
And he wanted to develop this tool for iPad where you put an iPad in front of each player. Hold on. Okay. Hey, I have this spray bottle here because my cat likes to jump on top of my speakers and attack my speaker cones.
Oh,
I need to,
not good. Not good. Yeah.
yeah, make sure she doesn't do that. So yeah, my friend wanted to create this iPad app where you put an iPad in front of each player of the orchestra.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of generates sheet music in real time. And just like the iPad just scrolls through sheet music and it's just generating it all in real time. And then 60 people play it, right? Like, and they're all trained to sight read and play stuff as it's created. So you could get this like really well articulated playing from these people who actually are trained to do that. But it's all digitally generated in real time.
Right.
But the idea got shot down by the classical community because they were like, no, that's sacrilege to the classical way. You can't do that. That would technically be improvising. Screw that. But
So it was the computer that was generating the notes.
yeah, they said no
But it was
to
all
that.
a generated program. Yeah, I mean, you could get a robot to do that too, right? To do the playing part.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think we've quite got robots to the point where you can articulate a, say, violin the same way a human can, right?
Well, talk to some of our Japanese friends and see what they say about that one.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose
I think they have some
you
pretty
get,
advanced robots, but I'm not sure exactly what point it's at if you could do that. But yeah.
I mean, you definitely have robots that can perform surgery now. Did you see the thing that Elon Musk released? Like, I think it was earlier this week or last week, called the Neuralink?
No.
Dude, this is insane.
Really,
so
yeah.
Elon Musk's new thing is you go into a hospital on your lunch break and you can go home the same day and they cut a hole out of your skull that's about the size of a maybe, I don't know, quarter.
Yeah.
And then they put what's called a Neuralink in there. It's like a little computer disc with 1,000 or so wires, like very small wires coming out of it that get probed into your brain. And then they super glue this disc into the hole that they created in your brain. And then you basically have a computer connected directly to your brain.
Well, that's just like my last solo album. That was the concept, Wired from Madness.
Was
Did
that the
you
concept?
check it out? It was pretty much like that.
Huh.
It was a kind of a story, if you will. Like a guy goes in for this operation where he gets his, becomes partly computerized and gets his brain wired so he doesn't have to deal with the daily, kind of thinking in life, and the computer takes over and things become easier. And yeah, I mean, it's a very similar concept. That's very interesting.
Yeah,
that
so
was
that's
announced.
real now. And he's already tested it on pigs. And the pigs seem to be completely healthy and fine, and they can like test information coming from them and whatnot. Because when you think about it, like we're already kind of cyborgs, right? Like we already are attached to our phones and stuff. It's just that the bandwidth between us and our phone, like the data transfer between us and our phone, is very slow. So if you take away the hand and the eye data transfer, like where all the data is coming and going from, and transfer it to a chip that's super glued into your skull, then you can up that data transfer rate quite a bit.
So was he creating the super pig?
Super what?
Super pig.
Oh, I mean, I suppose.
What a concept. Like all of a sudden the pig is walking around and he's smarter than the person.
Right, yeah. He's like walking on two legs and has thumbs and shit.
He's jamming like and playing lead guitar. He knows the complete repertoire from Hendrix to Vai to Segovia, could be.
Yeah, speaking of guitarists, I used to be super into guitar. And
you've got to cut that out back there. He's scratching at the... I'm talking to your cat.
She's just scratching her cat pole. That's fine.
That's okay. That's good.
Yeah. She's supposed to scratch that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, speaking of guitarists, I used to be a huge fan of guitar. I was massively into Steve Vai. I was massively into Hendrix. And I was massively into John Petrucci as well. And like Joe Satriani and all of that kind of stuff.
All the good players.
Who are your favorite guitarists?
Well, I think we just named a lot of them. Definitely, I'm a big Hendrix fan. I mean, that goes way back. I mean, I think Hendrix was always the coolest one.
Yeah, he wasn't sterile, right? Like he's one of those kind of players that was sort of improvisational, and you could feel that it was
his whole being,
flowy.
his whole being just reeked of groove and coolness. He was the ultimate, kind of tripped out, cool guitar player. But I'm a big fan of Vi also, like you said. Big fan of Jeff Beck. These days, I'm a big fan of Guthrie Govan, people like that, and Bumblefoot, who's Romthal. That's his code name, Bumblefoot. Yeah, some great players, and of course Petrucci. I mean, John Petrucci just put out a new album, Terminal Velocity, which has his tone is astounding. It's incredible guitar tone. It's beautiful.
Does he make all those tones himself?
I think he's very much into his gear. He's doing a lot of it. I think he has some help from engineers as well that kind of assist with things, miking positions and stuff like that when he's recording. And he's no man is alone, so he has his team. But yeah, I mean, he gets a great. He's always been all about tone and spends a lot of time on his tone.
Similarly, with you and your tone, because you're playing a lot of keyboards, which are essentially synthesizers, do you spend a lot of time on the kind of sound design for your sounds that you play, or do you sort of just use presets, or do you have other people design the sounds for you, or is it kind of like a collaborative process?
I spend a lot of time programming. I'll use a lot of starting points, since there's so many sounds out there. Gobs and gobs of sound libraries, every shape and size. So a lot of times I feel like I don't have to invent the wheel again. But what I will do is go find a sound that's a little similar to what I want, and then I'll shape it. Sometimes it's this basic stuff, just changing the release time or changing the filter a little bit, or, getting what I need. I do a lot of combinations or multi sounds as a keyboard player, where I'll mix some kind of strings, and maybe I'll put a little bit of choir in there and find a pad that goes with it. All different ways to kind of achieve what I'm thinking about. And there's a lot of sounds that I call them my prog sounds, where I want to have a nice attack and it really feels strong under my fingers. It's more than just a piano or something, or just a simple synth. I'll layer a lot of sounds where I'll use some kind of a marimba sound or xylophone even, just to get that attack, and I'll put it just enough in there that when I press a key, you don't say to yourself that's a mallet instrument, but you think it's got a real hit to it. So, and maybe I'll put some kind of a keyboard and a little bit of a marcato kind of string sound, and a lot of the sounds end up being 7 or 8 layers, and or more, and they are, they just make up the tone. So I definitely have a lot of signature kind of sounds that I use in my work. There's no doubt.
Oh, that's interesting. So I have a friend, his name's Patrick Leonard, and he produced a lot of music for people back in the day. He produced Madonna's Like a Prayer, and he produced a bunch of stuff. But he played keyboards for Michael Jackson on the Thriller tour. And he told me that back then, to do this layering that you're talking about, right, where you want a little bit more transient on your sound, or you want more width or something like that. All they had was Yamaha DX7s, basically, which at the time was the cream of the crop synth. It was the best shit.
Yeah.
And because they didn't have, these crazy multi-processor, multi-layerable single units, what they would do is they would send MIDI from the one unit that he had on stage that he was playing to a giant MIDI pipe that would then output MIDI to 20 DX7s off the side of the stage. And then all of those DX7s would output into a big mixer. And then they'd combine all of the sounds on a mixer. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how he'd get his big synth sound is through literally triggering 20 hardware synthesizers at the same time via MIDI.
They had those racks, this TX816 or something like that it was called, of all the FM, DX7 kind of in a rack unit at one point, and people would have a couple of those big units. I remember that, and that was the thing. I was talking to somebody about FM synthesis actually yesterday. We were saying that there's still magic there, it's still some cool stuff. But man, how things have changed. You can get these synthesizers now where, like a workstation, and like Roland, Korg, Yamaha, you can layer up to 16 parts on some of these. So you could have massive layers right there. Yeah, the sounds
just with a single
excellent.
synth, you mean?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, when I play with Dream Theater, I use a Korg Kronos, and any sound from the outside world that I need to get in, I'll just sample into it. And then I have my combination mode where I just sometimes have these really big sounding things with Taurus bass pedal sounds on my pinky and huge strings and choirs and maybe sound effects on different keys. And yeah, that's kind of like my world these days.
Yes, layering is super important. I mean, that's a big part of my world as well, right? Because like a big part of my music is not dependent so much on like the songwriting and like the melodies and the chord progressions and all that, but it's really dependent on the sound design. And yeah, I do a lot of that stuff as well. Like for instance, I design all my own drums, and when I design, say, a snare, I'll layer a little bit of kick drum under it just to give it like that extra bit of like low sort of transient
oomph.
And then yeah, even when I make synth sounds, quite often I find myself layering like a small amount of kick drum transient under the synth sound, just so that the sound is like more punchy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like sometimes what I'll do, it's almost like, well, that's functional, but like within Dream Theater, if we're playing a super fast riff, something that just burns and is crazy, the bass and the guitar can only get so much articulation in and so much of an impact on the transient of the of the sound. So I'll go in and I'll put one of my layers to be just like a real hit sound or something. It's like something that has an absolute attack, and put that under it. So when I double it with them, I'm doubling it because it's cool to double the sound, but I'm also doubling it to try to allow the part to function to where you hear each individual attack of the note. Which,
so like some of the sounds you play on the keyboard are not actually tonal. They're more just like a drum almost that you're using to layer with the guitar.
Very,
or something.
Very similar to what you're saying. I'll take literally a percussive sound, and it doesn't have to be an exact pitch, but I'll put it in there. So when I go it'll have that little thing that gives you that feeling of impact for every note.
I suppose you could think of the whole band that way, right? Like if you're playing that riff, and then say Mike Portnoy is doing double kicks off, like like that's kind of a kick drum layer to the melody that you're playing, and it's kind of like kick drum layer, melody layer, guitar layer. It's the whole band is sort of a layering system.
Yeah, is it a pitch? Right, are you adding a pitch? Are you adding a noise? And what's the end result? I mean, that's totally what it's all about. The funny thing to think about, though, is like, when we take our music out, whether it's electronic music or it's rock music, like my band, we'll go and we'll play really big places where there's maybe a bunch of reverb in the room. Then you start going, it's like, whoa, that can get very cloudy sounding, pretty quickly. That's another reason why I'll try to add some kind of a sound that gives things more definition, because I know we're going to take it into rooms where they're not really made for 64th notes,
Yeah, I actually think about that sometimes with a lot of my music as well. I notice that the stuff that sounds the best in really reverberant rooms is the simplest, driest music, stuff with a lot of space in it, and stuff that isn't produced with a lot of reverb in it, because then it's kind of like the room adds all the liveness to it that you would want, and then the track automatically then sounds like very clean.
Yeah, I've always wanted the companies like the Korgs and Rolands and Yamahas and all these people to have something like a global kind of reverb control. And what I mean by that is, let's say you go into every patch that you make, right? And you have it all set for your composition. This sound has a little reverb, this sound has a lot of reverb. And, when we're finding our sounds, we're thinking what it sounds like with our speakers, our headphones. But when you go to a gig and you have all those sounds of different amounts of reverb, but you're like, okay, this room has, a 7-second delay in it, then you want to be able to pull it all back. It'd be nice to have one control, like on my Kronos. That would be, okay, this is a global reverb change where it takes away, a certain percentage of the reverb that's on all the patches, depending on where you're playing. Because, as you said, it's going to change for every room that you're playing in, and it'd be nice to be able to make an adjustment. Unless you're improvising or something like that, and you're listening to the room and you're reacting to the room, right? That's the thing. I played in a church at Stanford University. And I went in there with the idea that the concert would be very much about the room, knowing I wasn't going to be playing music that I composed somewhere else and just trying to kind of place it in this room no matter what. It was more that I was, I came in there with sounds, but I was going to be listening to the room and improvising and allowing things to ring and reacting to what I heard and what I felt from the space.
Yeah, I always notice that when I go into somebody else's studio, like a producer's studio, and listen to their tunes in their studio where they wrote them, they always sound so insanely good. But then when you listen to them outside of that context, it's never the best. Or it's not never the best, but it's never quite as good as when you listen to it in their studio in the exact way that they intended for it to sound. And there's an argument that gets thrown around a lot in the film scoring world for this, which is like they don't want to treat their rooms as much as you maybe normally would treat a control room, like a real studio or whatever. And a good example of this is like Hans Zimmer's studio or Junkie XL, his studio. Most of their studio is like synthesizers, which basically turns your walls into metal, right? Because synths are like this,
right.
Just metal panels, which is terrible for acoustics.
Right,
and they won't have a lot of treatment. They'll maybe have like hanging curtains or something like that, because that's kind of how a theater is, right? It's just some hanging curtains. And then they'll have like these big far loudspeakers rather than like these really close type monitors and stuff like that. And they'll essentially try to get it closer to what it's going to be like, at a theater, because if what's the point of like making this really tight and sterile sounding control room if the people who are ever going to listen to the film or whatever are never going to be able to listen to it in that environment? So you might as well make it closer to the environment that it's going to be mostly enjoyed in, which for an artist might be a venue, right? So there's like kind of an argument for maybe writing music or producing music in larger untreated rooms through loudspeakers, but I mean, I guess it's for a lot of people just totally unfeasible.
I mean, I think that it's really important to have an awareness of where you plan to bring your music and how people are going to be listening to it. I mean, nowadays it makes sense to do a mix and check it on your iPhone, like just to see if it sounds good and the way that people are going to be listening to it. iPhone, iPad, computer speakers, just kind of check it everywhere. But I think
I do that quite a bit with subs, because I understand a lot of people listen on iPhones and through AirPods and stuff like that. So I'll listen, or I generally don't check it on an iPhone anymore, but I kind of have developed tricks for making it sound like sub exists on iPhone. And what you do is you make your sub, which is essentially just like a low sine wave, right? And then you sort of distort the second and third and fourth and fifth harmonics. Like you take harmonics of the sub. So, if you're using a synthesizer like Operator in Ableton that has a coarse mode, which is essentially integers of the fundamental frequency, then you create a second, third, fourth, fifth harmonic in like a chain and then slightly distort each one to kind of create this like phantom image of sub. So if you're on an iPhone, you'll hear the top harmonics, but then you'll sort of hear the harmonic below that slightly quieter and the next one slightly quieter again, and it sort of tapers down and your brain sort of fills in the blank where it thinks that there's sub down there.
That's pretty cool. Getting very scientific about it, as you should.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to be, I think, when your entire... I mean, you probably get super scientific as well, but from a like more note-driven perspective, right? It's kind of the same thing with production, where you get super scientific about it, but the value of the music isn't so much based around like crazy songwriting and stuff like that, and it is based around sound design. So instead, the scientific thinking goes down that route instead of the other one.
Right. And of course, the idea of putting both those worlds together is a really good one.
Totally. Yeah, that's the ideal, I suppose.
Takes more time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And demands a different kind of an audience as well. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of like digital, the digital sort of more sound designy techie world, I wanted to talk a bit about Wizdom music, Because
Cool.
oh shit, what are you doing, YouTube?
Hey, stop knocking things over.
Yeah, because you're super into developing software, it seems like, or
Yes,
developing
I am.
apps. And I'm looking at your Wikipedia page now. Some of them that you've developed is SampleWiz, which is a touchscreen enabled sampler. MorphWiz, which is a touchscreen music creation controller. GeoSynth, which is a digital music controller interface. Tachyon, which is an app for mixing. Leap Motion, which is yet to be released, but is a touchless music controller with 4-finger location in 3D, creating music verses according to the finger locations. I've already seen the Leap Motion controllers, which is like you use your hand in real space to control something.
Right.
HarmonyWiz, which is an advanced harmonic generator, which can create multi-part harmony from just a single musical line. The Jordantron, which is all your sounds from your live setup in your iPad. SketchWiz turns your camera into a personal sketch artist. EarWizard trains your ear while improving
you're bringing
memory
me way
skills.
back.
And
Yeah,
then
right,
GeoShred,
right.
which is an app that allows musicians to create mind-bending guitar sounds and effects on an iPad. Yeah, it's crazy, man. How long have you been into app development stuff?
Well, since the iPhone originally came out, I've been doing this into it. I was very inspired by the whole multi-touch experience, moving my finger on the screen and thinking, wow, there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with this. So my first app was actually called MorphWiz, and it changed a lot of things for me because it was a cool app. And it was an award-winning app, too. It won the Billboard Award for the best music app that year, which was nice in the sense that it kind of set me up so that everything I did after that got a lot of attention. So I could keep on doing it, keep on playing around. So these days, the main kind of push and the main app that I've been working on is GeoShred. GeoShred has become a platform. And actually, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be releasing all these new instruments for GeoShred. It's very exciting. We teamed up with a company called Audio Modeling, and we're releasing various physical models. So people will be able to buy as like an in-app purchase for their iPhone or their iPad. The cello model, the violin model. There's also the clarinet and the oboe and the saxophone and the flute, and they're beautiful sounding models, extremely realistic. And of course, GeoShred is also a very powerful MIDI controller. So you don't need to use any of the sounds in GeoShred. You can use it as a MIDI controller, and it functions very much like a keyboard or a Linstrument. It's that kind of like MPE controller where every note is completely independent. So you put your finger down and you can bend one note and not the other, or you can push up and
yeah,
get
for
some
people
kind
who
of
don't
modulation.
understand what MPE is, because a lot of my listener base is probably Ableton users, and Ableton doesn't have MPE. It stands for multi-pitch expression or something like that, right? And then basically what it means is like if you draw a chord in your DAW, you can take the top note of the chord and say pitch it one way, and then the bottom note of the chord or the middle note of the chord and pitch it another way. See, what you're saying is with this app, you can kind of put 5 fingers on the on your phone screen and pitch each note separately. And as long as the thing you're sending it into, whether it be like Bitwig or something, can adjust for that, then
yeah, basically any MIDI controller you can send from your touch. So I think it's multi-polyphonic expression, and if I wanted to just have filter assigned to the y-axis, any note that I push up on the y-axis, or like certain iPhones will still do the Z, which is pressure. You could assign something to pressure, and every finger is completely independent. Very unlike standard synthesizers where you play a chord and you move the pitch wheel or a joystick and everything kind of changes. This is the kind of like a more musical approach, more like a guitar or something like that, where every finger is its own kind of like independent control. So GeoShred is about that. So it functions as a controller, and it also functions as its own sound engine. You can use it as a tone module, so you can play it from a keyboard or from a C-board or from a Linstrument or whatever. So it's kind of an exciting time for us because we're about to release this whole new area of physically modeled sounds, which are very, very inspiring.
And when you first got into this app development world, was it more to create like a second financial stream from Dream Theater, or was it more just because you found it interesting and cool? Or?
Yeah, I wasn't really thinking about money at all, honestly. I was just doing it because I was like, wow, man, this cool stuff that can happen here. I've always been really, kind of hypersensitive to sound and interested in, ever since I turned my first dial on a synthesizer, I was kind of like, this is awesome. I just felt a real connection to it in a very different way than in anything I was doing acoustically. So, that kind of like move from like hardware synthesizers, and when I got the opportunity to try things on touch screens, I was like, wow, this is awesome. Check out what you can do. And a lot of people say, oh, yeah, but you're playing on like glass, whatever, just a sheet of glass. And I'm like, yeah, but it's awesome. Like, first of all, there's so much you can do with like visuals. The way your brain works is kind of like if you touch it and you present a certain visual, you can forget what you're even touching. Like an example being like, there's some applications that have like, you press down on a zone, and it might have like a string, and if you press it, in a certain way, the string will vibrate, and you forget that it's not really vibrating because you think your touch, you can't totally separate what you're seeing and what you're hearing and what you're touching. There's kind of a point where it all kind of comes together, and it's really interesting to think about that and to play with that. And of course, the more control, better. I mean, it'd be great if iPads had Z. They have X being left and right and Y vertical, but Z is something that they've unfortunately left out of all the iPads. But there's just so much you can do. It's when you start thinking about having every finger be its own independent controller. So like on GeoShred, every note area, which you can size, you can have the notes be very small, you can have the notes be very large, and you have that space in there to do any kind of like control. So you can set it for absolute mode or relative mode and relative mirrored mode, and really do some very expressive, wonderful things.
And do you use this this app either in any of the shows you do with Dream Theater or whatever, or do you use it in the studio at all to input MIDI into your computer in the production process?
Yeah, I actually at one point I had my keytar gutted. We took out all the keys and we put 2 iPads in there instead. So I would walk out front and I'd be able to shred a lead on GeoShred. And one iPad was just doing visuals, and the other one was just like playing, with GeoShred. So, and I use it in the studio. There's some sounds that I've used a lot. Like there's this one that let me think of the patch name. It's called Fripper. Robert Fripp.
Mm-hmm.
Was an amazing guitar player, but I called it Fripper. I'm spacing out on the second name of the patch, but anyway, it's this cool patch, and basically when you put your finger on it, it doesn't make just a tiny bit of sound, but as soon as you move your finger, it's like every patch is almost every note is like its own volume pedal. It's really, really cool. And what happens is when you move your finger in the X direction after bringing in some volume, it excites the string. It's physical modeling, so you can use the X to literally do string excitation, and it creates it allows the sound to sustain more. And then it also has physically modeled amplifiers in there, so you can achieve that effect of a guitarist like moving towards his amp with the guitar and having it when it starts to feed back, and when you kind of move around the amp and like you're getting all these different feedback tones, GeoShred will do that. So there's like magic when you push your finger up to get volume, move it left and right to excite the string, and then use the expression pad, which is on top, to change your position in relationship to the amplifier.
Yeah, man, it's so crazy that like these days the computer that you hold in your hand, like a phone, is way more powerful than even like say the laptop that I started producing on, which was like a Dell laptop with 500 megs of RAM and like, you know, a fucking 1 gigahertz processor, if that, or maybe even a 500 megabyte processor. It was insanely bad. But it's just insane that like now that everyone basically has like an iPhone or like, you know, solid Android phone, or most people at least, that everyone kind of with, you know, a $2 app or a $5 app can make releasable hit music off it if they know what they're doing with setup.
Yeah, right. It's incredible. And there's so many tools now. You know, it's great when somebody can find a tool that really functions for them and they learn how to use it and they can express themselves with it. In some ways, having so many tools is not that great because it's almost like it's overwhelming.
Yeah, you get
It's
option
like,
paralysis.
Yeah, it's like you have so much software or whatever, you just don't even know what to do. And, you know, I mean, I don't know if you can relate to this, but like I have a ton of software too because I'm really interested in sounds and I want to know what everybody's doing. And I mean, you know, I just like the stuff. But when it comes down to actually making music, like, yeah, I might go on a little journey, you know, down a software route and look for something new or cool that I got. But a lot of times I'll go for something that I just know. You know, that I'll just go for like Omnisphere or something that just has like a ton of really great sounds. And I know I'll find something really good there. And it's got a really good search engine. And, you know, and so just to have tools that, you know, function for you that are not that far away, that you're not going to have to spend all day, like, you know, looking around. And
well, it's
trying
a
to get something to
different kind
work.
of thing, right? Like when you're in the music writing process, quite often you just want to play and get music written, but learning new software it's like a different kind of exploration. It's not like a musical exploration, it's more of a technical one, and you sort of have to be in that, all right, I'm going to sit down and like not write music right now, I'm just going to learn about technical shit, and you have to be excited to do that it's different days. I find that like learning about technical shit kind of mindset, I have those days where I just want to do that, but I have a lot of days where I just want to make music and don't really care about learning a new tool.
I definitely don't wake up every day with the spirit of adventure in terms of wanting to like learn how to use some new piece of technology. But sometimes, I mean, you kind of have to like if you like, you know, you get a new piece of hardware, you might have to psych yourself up a little bit to take it out of the box and okay, let's go. You know, let's figure this thing out. So that means that you're not going to be making music that day. You might have some frustration because you might not immediately understand what, you know, how to plug it in or where the power button is. But once you find a few things and get settled, you know, you're like, okay.
Well, it comes back to that thought we were having earlier, right? About sometimes when you're having a thought, you want to get it out as quickly as possible with as little friction as possible, right? And there's nothing that's like more friction generating than a new piece of gear or a new piece of software.
Right, exactly.
You're essentially handicapping yourself. So in regards to app development, how much of that development do you do versus other developers?
Well, I'm not a coder. I don't do that part. I do more like I'm more about the vision of what it is we want to create. I organize people. I organize ideas. I'm really good at kind of figuring out who's best to do what kind of a task and working with them. So, and I've worked with a whole lot of different talented programmers through the years with different kinds of projects. Like, for instance, the HarmonyWiz app, which is really a minor musical miracle the way it works. You basically take your finger and you draw like a line, a curvy line, and it looks at how fast you draw the line, how high, how low you go, and then you hit the HarmonyWiz button and it creates this really wonderful harmony. So the way that all came about is I was poking around on the App Store and I saw this app that basically allowed creation of like these block chords. Like you'd put in a note, you'd input single notes, and then it would decide in like a classical style what chords to put, almost like without a definite rhythm. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, that's a great idea, but it would be so much cooler if it actually made music. Let me turn that ringing off. So I spoke to the developer and I said, hey, you know, that's really, really cool, but let's do something where we make music with that, because you obviously have the rules, you know, down within your system. So we spent a long time talking about the music and talking about what the real vision would be. And my job was to say, look, we don't only want block chords. It's extremely boring. We want to have movement in it, and then we had to define a lot more musical rules to make it work. So that job was very much about talking to the developer and really us both deciding on what we wanted this thing to really do. So he was the one who could code it.
Man, speaking of developers, after we had the call last week, because I live in San Francisco, right? Like I just know a ton of developers because this is the tech hub of the universe. Basically, everyone who works here works for like Facebook or Google or some tech startup or basically there's a lot of developers here. Right. And I went to my girlfriend's house and she lives with like 10 people and they're all developers. And I mentioned like as we were having dinner that I chatted with one of the guys from Dream Theater, and one of the people at her table, Mayank, he was like, "Oh, cool, is that Jordan?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was. How did you know?" And he was like, "Oh, I was developing an app for him, actually."
That's right. Yeah, we started on something. It was pretty cool. It was like a granular synthesis type of thing. Got pretty far, and then he got kind of busy. Yeah. So when you see him again, tell him we got to finish the project.
Yeah, the granular stuff that he's doing. So he made this app called Bent.fm, which is super cool. It's basically like this big grid, and you can attach like any of the squares to any other square, and it kind of behaves as if like you're circuit bending an instrument, but on your phone. Wow.
Is it an iOS app?
Yep, it's called Bent.fm.
I wonder if I have that. Is it something recent, or is it something I might?
I think he made it a while ago.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really cool. Really talented developer.
Bent.fm. Yeah, well, the thing we were working on was very cool too. There it is. Bent.fm circuit bending music software.
Yep. It's really cool. How did you find Mayank?
Oh, nice. I'll check it out. How did I find? I found Mayank because I was doing. It was through Stanford University, actually. Yeah, I think so. I did an artist relations. I did I was an artist in residence at Stanford University's Karma, and I met a whole bunch of cool people, and Mayank was one of the people that I kind of met through that whole world. All those people that go there end up being like the head audio person at Facebook or Adobe or Google or Apple. It's a crazy, wild world of, super smart people.
So one of the crazy things that I've noticed about the developer world, a lot of people who are coders don't become coders because they go to university for studying coding. Like a lot of them don't go to university, study computer science or programming or anything like that, and then go on to become a programmer. A lot of them study things like physics and maths and just other things, right, that still require a lot of like logical thinking and like puzzles and math, and then go on to just learn the architecture of something like JavaScript or Python or anything like that, and they're able to just like pretty easily, it seems like, transfer their knowledge from physics or math over to programming pretty easily, and then monetize their skill set that way. Because it seems like the only thing you can do if you get extremely good at math or extremely good at physics or something like that, if you get extremely good at physics, it seems like mostly what you do is work at a school doing research and get paid by the school to do research projects, which is pretty cool and fun, but maybe not the most fulfilling for some people. And then the other thing that you can do if you're super into math or whatever is, I don't know, you could do like data analytics or something, or you could look at you work for an insurance company and like value up how risky something is, like risk analysis or something like that. But so a lot of people don't want to do that stuff, and they just get into software.
Yeah. I have a friend of mine actually who is an extremely talented musician, very technical person, was always good with things like doing cool videos and good with cameras, and one of the first people to do really cool like split screen videos with just great songwriting and all that. And anyway, he kind of at some point he still makes music, of course, but he was kind of thinking, this is really hard. It's hard to make a living doing this. I think he went on the road one time and he was like, I can't do this, and he taught himself to program. And now he's doing he's been doing some really great stuff, His name is Eyal Amir. He's just a very gifted guy. He just taught himself to program, and he's just like a high-level, coder now. So
yeah, you can do that pretty easily these days. The same way you can easily teach yourself anything on the internet these days, right? Like somebody could go on the internet these days, and if they were driven enough to do it, could probably get a Juilliard level music degree just off YouTube or Wikipedia.
I guess. I think if they were driven enough to do it, right.
Yeah, exactly. Like the information is there is what I'm saying. But yeah, it's like very tough to have that kind of discipline for sure that a like rigorous academic environment would give you.
Yeah, there's something about having a teacher kind of check in with you and look at what you're doing that can really help. But look at the whole guitar kind of generation, where the art of playing the guitar has accelerated so intensely. You think about players like Hendrix, we were talking about. Then you move forward years later, and you have people like Vai and these amazing Tosin Nabasi. These guys who were absolutely over the top, and the art of the guitar has just accelerated to a point you would have never even dreamed of that. And a lot of it is because of the availability of these apps that can slow things down, and YouTube and all the technology that supports people who are trying to learn.
Yeah, I think one thing that helps like certain areas of people learning a thing accelerate a lot is just the willingness to share information as well, right? Like for the longest time, nobody wanted to share information about production because they were like, no, this is like my sound design technique, and if you have that sound design technique, then you'll have what I have, and then therefore I'm not unique anymore, right? And then therefore I get devalued and you get more valued. And there was like this big thing about like people not wanting to share secrets and stuff. But in the last bunch of years, production knowledge on the internet has become so prevalent, especially on YouTube, that pretty much anyone can just go on there and get the same degree probably that I got from SAE. And as a result of that, the electronic music community has just gotten so insanely big to the point now where electronic music is like one of the biggest genres on the planet, whereas 10 years ago it was fucking nothing. Like everyone thought electronic music was dumb.
It's amazing how huge it is and how many tools there are to make it.
Yeah,
you think about that.
I think the same thing kind of happened with guitar, right? It's like a bunch of guitarists just were like, all right, let's just share all of our information, and they're sort of like a standing on the shoulders of giants situation. They were able to just sort of like volley off each other over the last few generations to the point now where it's just like accelerated, like you were saying.
Right. Yeah, it's incredible. Think about all the people that are. You blink your eyes and like there's another electronic musician. You wake up in the morning, somebody says, "Oh, have you seen this guy?" And he's doing something incredible, and you're like, "Damn it, too many people out, too much competition." But no, but I think but it also accelerates the art form. It's just a crazy world we live in, where it's hard to even have a new idea because people are generating. So many people are generating so much stuff all the time. Like you think of an album title and you go, "Oh, I better check on Apple Music and type that in and see what comes up." And you type in your title that you thought was absolutely ingenious and creative and new, and you find out there's 20 albums that are called that. It's like. That's a little bit tough.
Yeah, I wonder at what point you'll just like randomly combine letters from the alphabet to like a giant string of 20 numbers, so it just looks like a generated password from a password manager or something like that, and then you're like, oh, I should check that, and there's also an album called that or something.
Right. What year will that happen? That's funny.
Yeah, it would take a lot of albums for that.
Did you ever hear about the website where it was an automatic John Anderson, the singer of Yes, obviously, an automatic John Anderson word generator?
No, I did not.
Somebody told me, I don't know if it still exists, but it was something where it would automatically make up words. The computer would make up words in the style of Yes.
John Anderson word generator. So I imagine this works off.
I don't know.
Is it called Virtual John?
Maybe. I don't know. I heard about it.
So yeah, create your own Yes classic. So how many lines would you like in the song? Let's say 10. A place where you would like to include in your song. I don't know. Let's say Sydney. What's a person's name? Let's say Jordan. Name of the person the dedication is from. Bill.
Nice.
There we go. Compose my song. All right.
What do we got?
This song is called Gate Could Never Be Towards Sydney. says, to love beautifully at Sydney, looking on, all of us, leaving after land, looking clearly, nearing green tree, embracing near graceful crystal. Yeah,
perfect.
Pretty good.
It's perfect. I have the melody in my head already. Because of John Anderson.
That's an interesting thing to talk about.
As great as John Anderson's and Yes's music was or is, the melodies are often very like, green tree like the stella, like very much one note or a few notes, kind of magic notes that he would sing those spacey. That's a perfect lyric, by the way.
Right.
Can you print that out and publish it, please?
Yeah, I'll copyright it so no one else can take it. I wonder what the legality is of that, because it was generated by a computer. Like, who owns it?
Probably you.
Yeah, because I pressed.
They should have a little thing right on there. Do you want to own this? And then it should charge you like $2 and automatically generate like a copyright agreement for you. And then I could work with developers and we could create an additional site where you link it up to the music creation and you actually take those words and make music with it.
Yeah, it just takes like the amount of syllables in the sentence and generates quarter notes off it or something.
More than quarter notes. I mean, if I could think it in my head when you were saying it, why couldn't a machine take the same rules that allowed me to perceive, imagine the music and make something?
See, that's the thing, right? There's a lot of people who are into music think that it's not possible for computers to write it. But like you just said, it's based on a set of rules, and the set of rules is pretty finite and pretty limited.
Yeah. And it's per style. I mean, like, the style of Yes. They have certain kinds of chords that they use and that they don't use, certain kind of rhythmic ideas that they'll, put out there, and that creates the Yes sound. Like I was saying, you think about the melodies that John Anderson creates. There's definite rules there, It's not going to have a lot of skips, It's going to be a certain, you might say that, okay, we're going to allow the same note to happen not more than 4 notes 4 times in a row, and every time it gets to the 4th note, we're going to have a skip of either a whole step in one direction or a whole step in the next direction, and every 2 or 3 measures try to have some kind of a tie. I mean, like, we could literally compose the rules for the computer now and talk to a coder and have this thing done, and, like, probably in about 20 years, since these guys tend to be so slow. I was going to say in like 2 days. In my head, I could have it done in 2 days, but often these things take a little bit of time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, hardest thing with programming, it seems like, is bugs and stuff, right? Like the first thing you write, you don't expect that one thing is going to interact with another thing in some way, and it breaks or something.
And then keeping up with all the operating systems and all the crap that they have to deal with. And then when you put it out, then you got to deal with all the support issues, and that's a whole nother thing, right?
Yeah, that's actually one of the when I was talking earlier about how guitarists have kind of stood on the shoulders of each other and producers have done the same thing. That's something tech people have done too, and that's kind of, I think, one reason why tech has gotten so big and popular is because of GitHub. And one big thing that happens on GitHub is people will write these like pretty complicated programs that do this really specific thing, to the point where like GitHub is basically a giant free sample library of code, like boilerplate code that you can use. Wow. But a lot of the reason why they don't charge for it is because if you charge for it, then you have to offer support, right? And then that kind of like ensconces your entire life of having to deal with emails. So they're just like, you know what? I'm going to offer no support, give it out for free. People can use it, and that's that.
Right. Well, there's definitely something to that. I mean, like, my guys, spend so much time on support. Like, every day you have to put aside time for support. And then also every day somebody says, when is it coming out for this platform or that platform? Where's Android? I'm like, well, we're only a few guys. And, trying to keep this, not only just keep it supported for the platform that we did release it on, but also trying to come up with some important new, new features, new things to keep the business alive. It's a crazy world out there, my friend.
Yeah. How many, what was the company again? Is it Wizdom?
Wizdom with a Z is my company.
Right.
Wizdom Music.
Yeah. How many people is that?
Oh, well, Wizdom Music, I mean, really my wife and I run it, but then we work with different teams, to do the coding.
Oh, right. So you kind of just contract those people.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of times we'll just work on something, and then we have a plan. We know it's going to come out, and we just get money in the back end when whatever we've been working on starts to sell. And honestly, it's not my main business or anything like that. Of course, my main business is Dream Theater, and as everybody knows at this point in time, everybody's off the roads. Not a whole lot of touring. So personally, I've been spending a lot of time developing a whole Patreon environment. Do you do that? Do you do Patreon?
Yeah, actually, this podcast has a Patreon. That's the only thing I do Patreon for. I have so I've been doing a similar thing to Patreon for like the last 10 years, which is like a website that I have that people can subscribe to, where I regularly put sample packs and tutorials and like project files and stuff like that, so people can just download them and have access to those kind of things.
So so now that I've been home, I've been really focusing on this Patreon, because I feel like, as somebody who's been enjoying kind of interacting with people and sharing, and I've always been very open and interested in social media, and I was probably one of the first people to get on any kind of like video chat that ever existed years ago. There was a system called Vocal, where you could bring different people on the screen, VOKLE, long forgotten now, but it was actually really, really cool.
It's kind of like the original Twitch or Ustream or something.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was a long time ago. But I love that. And and as an improviser, somebody who loves to just sit down and play, I decided that, wow, first of all, music is not free. Unfortunately, I hate to break that news to some people out there. And, the fact that we also need to eat and feed our cats and, all this kind of like real world stuff. And people should know that, we're doing our art form, and we really deserve to have something in return. And in the climate that we're in today, where, an artist like Peter Frampton could have 55 million streams of Baby, I Love Your Way and make, $1,700, there's something really wrong. So, enter Patreon, and Patreon offers artists like you and I the opportunity to do things and go directly to the fans and have them support our work. And personally, I've been finding it amazingly rewarding, because it gives me the opportunity to put on my cameras. And at this point, I've kind of upped my whole live streaming game. Now I got a bunch of cameras, and I put them all around my Steinway piano on my synthesizer, and I can really share there, and I feel like I'm getting something back. So there's the improvising, streaming, or I'll play songs sometimes as well. And there's also an educational part of my Patreon, where I'll offer, like chats with a certain group of people that want to ask me questions about whatever, music theory or composition or improvisation. And, I'll post notation, discuss more theoretical aspects of music. And so that's been another focus. So I'm kind of my day is bouncing between like work with Wizdom Music. These days is very much GeoShred focused, because we're about to release all these new physical modeled instruments, but also working really hard on developing this Patreon, because I'm a big believer in that platform. And I think that it's a nice way to educate people to what I'm doing, but also other musicians. I think it's really important to let people know out there that this is the world is changing, and this is a way that artists are reaching out and creating content and interesting things that should be supported.
Nice. Well, cool, man. I appreciate you coming on. We've been chatting for like a little over an hour, which is kind of where I usually try to cap these, because I feel like that's where people's attention span maybe drops a little bit. But I think we talked about a lot of really interesting stuff. So, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting about all of this.
And we even covered SampleWiz, right?
I believe.
And we even covered SampleWiz, right? SampleWiz.
Nice.
Yeah, really, really fun stuff. And SampleWiz has a granular mode as well.
We even covered SampleWiz, right?
And it's on your iPhone.
It's insane.
Oh, it's amazing. It's great. Did you know that with SampleWiz, you could record something, and then after you record it, you could take your finger and actually, on the screen, you could move it along. And
with SampleWiz, you can record.
And every finger's totally independent here too.
Nice.
So I'll leave you with that.
It's crazy how powerful phones are these days. The fact that a
yeah.
phone can behave that way is nutty.
Right, totally.
But yeah, man, thanks so much again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend. It's great to see you and to chat about all these interesting things. Your questions were thought-provoking and things that I do like to talk about, so I appreciate that. So yeah.
Awesome.
Talk again.
All right. Till next time, man. Have a good one.
All right, bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Mr. Bill podcast. These episodes are edited and uploaded by Robert Fumo of 303podpro.com. You can also support the show, get early access to episodes, and hear bonus content by going to patreon.com/Mr. Bill's Tunes and becoming a patron. Please rate and review on iTunes unless you're going to be a little shit about it. And all the links to my various platforms are at MrBillsTunes.com. Thank you.